Africa, China, Mexico. Going to these foreign countries alone with limited support may cause you to be in some dangerous situations. Grab a blanket, turn off your lights, and be grateful you are safe where you are. Because these people certainly weren't. They almost died when they traveled to dangerous foreign countries. Nearly kidnapped in Africa. Before I start, I'll say that this did not happen to me personally, but involved a group of friends I was with. The fact that it could have happened to me creeped me out enough that I thought I'd share it. About 5 years ago, my sister and I went on a 1-month-long trip to volunteer with an organization in Tanzania. This consisted of anything from teaching at schools to working with local businesses and human rights organizations. We stayed in a small compound in a large town with volunteers from all over the world, staffed by locals, and were always encouraged to go out and have fun during our off hours. It was an amazing experience overall, save for one particular event that terrified us. The first weekend we were there, a group of us decided to go out on a mini safari in one of the national parks. Side note, it was awesome and we got to see one of a few lions left in the wild there. Our organization was to call cabs to pick us up and bring us to a large campsite that provided tours. Because we had about 8 people, we had to take 2 cabs, just really white vans basically, with my sisters and mine's leaving first. 4 girls were to leave in the other 1.5 hours after us. It was about a 2-hour drive, and on the way there, we expected to stop at a small but nice and modernized mall to pick up food for the weekend. We made it to the campsite on time with little issues. We tried to wait for the other girls to get there before eating dinner, but we were very hungry and decided to eat anyways. About 2 hours later, with the girls still not there, we began to worry. None of us had purchased a cell phone, and we had no way of contacting them. Finally, 1 hour later, they arrived. Shaken but relieved, they told us their story, which had us freaked out for the rest of the weekend. Their cab arrived on time and everything appeared normal. They spent most of their trip talking to the cab driver, who happily told them stories about his experiences in the country and Tanzanian culture in his broken English. One of the girls had brought a prepaid phone just in case of emergencies and provided our compound staff with her number just in case. About halfway through the trip, her phone rang, and it was our field coordinator who helped us arrange the trip. He told her, "Your real driver just showed up. Get out of the car now." She replied with something along the lines of, "Okay, thanks," and hung up, making up a story to explain the call to the other girls in the car. She questioned the driver about how far they were from the mall. He had no idea what she was talking about. This confirmed to her that this man really might not be who he says he is. After pressing the issue, the driver was finally convinced to let them stop in a shopping center. Immediately after getting out of the car, she told the others to run. They ran to 2 policemen inside and told them their story. They called the coordinator back, who sent the real driver out, with the police protecting them until he arrived. They didn't see the car or the man again. The creepiest part is, we have no idea how this happened. The only people who knew about this trip were us, our staff, and the drivers. We think this man may have overheard them talking about it at a bar earlier in the week, and stalked our compound to plan his actions. I was shocked because the order in which we left was completely random, and that would have been us if they decided to go first. And without a phone, there's no telling what could have happened. In a country like that, if you disappear, "You're gone." It didn't shake the positive experiences I had throughout the trip though, but it seriously unnerved me and had us extremely wary the rest of our time there. Almost kidnapped in China. I'm a traveler by heart, and I love to try new things. I was in China for 2 weeks with a tourist group of about 12 people, and I didn't know most of them, all from America. I knew one guy who happened to be my Kung Fu instructor, or should I say, Sifu. Sifu means teacher in Chinese, and he was fairly aged, about 37 years old. His dad was very old and lived in China and is a very popular man in his town. He teaches the local police force, and even sometimes the military. So let's get past these introductions and on to the story. About 1 day before we left China, we visited a clothing store that was owned by someone of our friends. We go there and all get free clothing and discounts, so I take off my jacket, which had my wallet and passport, and put it on a hanger. I try it on to take a picture with my group, and then I go back inside. I put on my jacket, and then we head out to lunch in our convoy that our instructor's dad set up for us. I ate food, and then I noticed one thing. I'm patting my pants down, my jacket pockets, looking around my seat. Someone asked me if everything was okay, and I calmly said, I lost my wallet. Maybe it's in the convoy car. Nothing was there. After a few hours, we finally hear back from the store. They went through the surveillance tape and called us up. They shared the recording with us, and what I saw gave me a slight feeling of anger and the creeps. 2 very well-dressed men in the store by themselves were just standing there, showing no interest in any of the clothing around them. Now one man is standing a bit near the door and sort of blocking the potential sight of anyone coming back in to see the other man. The other man quickly goes into my pocket, but no one else's pocket or belongings, just straight went for my stuff, which gave me the creeps. I enjoyed the last day of my trip, and I'm literally walking all over the place to see if I can find that guy again with his picture in my hand. But nothing. So the next day, my tourist group leaves and I am forced to stay behind because I have no exit visa or a passport. They gave me all of a few $100 and wished me luck in China as they went into the airport. I went back with my instructor's family and decided to stay one more night in my fancy hotel before I took my invite to their home. It's late at night and I'm in my hotel lobby room, which has a huge front glass door and a main street in front of it. I peer outside, and I know I saw the guy from the store who stole my stuff drive past and look at me. The next day, my instructor's brother, who is an ex-detective with a good but very small understanding of English, took me to the police department to file the theft. I know, it took us long to report it. Soon, I was a suspect for staying in China past my visa, so I'm in the department for hours getting my fingerprints checked and my mugshots taken. Eventually, they let me leave, and I go to the US Embassy and get my emergency passport. I got my exit visa in one, but I was literally told to wait 2 weeks before it was eligible and accessible. I figured it was too long, and I didn't want to hassle my new friends, so I ended up getting an inexpensive hotel room. By US standards, this hotel room could have been easily $100 a night in a state like New York or California. In China, the currency is a lot different. I only spent $21 a night for HD TV, new bedsheets, a huge shower room, and a $1 breakfast. It took me a few minutes to get used to the Chinese digital cable, I went out and got a new wallet as well, with all the money my tourist mates gave me each before they left. If you made it this far into the story, this is where the sketchy part happens. It was late at night, and one of my friends I've met in China knew I wanted a tattoo and told me about this cool spot to get inked up. He also told me to never go there without him, and what did I do? I go without him. This place was in an alley and looked very similar to a shopping center, but much smaller, if that makes sense. It was 2 floors and was off a decently busy street and had a lucrative look to it. The next day I go around early evening and it's raining only a little bit. I enter the building, which has a lobby, and I'm greeted by a man with a suit and an earpiece. Keep in mind, I'm in mainland China, and this man didn't know any English and I barely knew any Chinese. He looks at me and points me towards the front door. I insisted on staying and said, no tattoo, as I shake my head. I show him my drawing and he says something in Chinese with a look of satisfaction on his face and leads me upstairs. I'm finally led down a narrow hall with other doors and a tattoo parlor room. This room has about 5 people, including a lady with a tattoo gun, and I sit down on the sofa to wait for my turn. Thankfully, the lady spoke a little English, and we had a decent conversation, and I tell her my situation. As I'm in her chair ready to get inked up, with my button-up shirt off and my short-sleeve white t-shirt rolled up, 5 men in mostly dirty suits walk in the room and tell everyone something in Chinese, and they all leave. Except one put a stopping gesture with their hand and asked me to stay. Instantly, I knew something was up. I played it cool, but my folded tattoo sketch in my pocket, slowly put on my button-up shirt and sat on the waiting sofa, which was faced towards the front door. One of them blocked the doorway, and one is to my left, and 3 are standing in front of me in the half circle. One of them has a mean-looking tattoo on his neck and was decently built for a shorter than average person. They all say to me with aggressive body language. Keep in mind, I'm 6'4" and a lean 220 pounds. These guys were at most maybe 5'11". The rest were shorter. They pulled out their phone, and it's this translator app. They start asking me for all my money and where I was staying at, etc. One of them told me, through the app, which I had to read, to give them all my money or else, or something along those lines. I pull up my wallet, and they snatch all of my cash, and still they hover over me, like a bullying scolding a victim on the playground, obviously trying to intimidate me. They spot the corner of my discount membership card and tell me to give it to them. I use this moment to ask the man for his phone app, pretending I was agreeing with them, that he had put inside his pocket. There was a weird, brief moment of intense silence as they stood over me like they were planning on jumping me any second. They showed no signs of letting me leave, so as soon as the guy looked down to grab his phone, my heart rushes, I get the tunnel vision, I get up and tackle them through the front door. I feel one of them try to grab my shirt, but I use my elbow and shake him off as fast as I could. The guy at the door fell into the wall behind him. I sprint down the hallway and hear people yelling in Chinese behind me as they chase me. Down the hallway, I see the double-handled door chained and locked. Were they planning to keep me there? I didn't have time to think that, but I just instantly knew it when I saw those locked up doors. Next to the door was a fire escape, so I go out the window and onto the fire escape. We were on the 2nd floor. I climbed down the ladder and reached the ground. I sprint down the alley and almost slipped into a few puddles, but eventually made it to the main street. I went to some public markets nearby and had no money on me, so I stole a new hat, shirt, and umbrella. I wanted to look as different as possible. I ended up walking around that evening to make sure I wasn't followed. As I walked around, lots of people asked me for photographs. I'm 6'4", dark, and has Rasta dreads, a mixture you just never see in mainland China. So I charged them $5 for a photo. Eventually, I had a decent amount of cash, so I got a taxi to go back to the train station, go back to my hotel room, and took a shower, went to my friend's house for dinner, and told them the story. During that dinner, my friend told me that was a triad hangout, and I could have easily been drugged or kidnapped. I was in the town of Foshan, China. This event happened in another nearby town. Creepy triad thugs. Let's not meet again. P.S. I know my grammar is a bit bad. I haven't written in a long time. Abducted in Mexico City. This happened to my father when I was a young girl, in the early or mid-90s. My dad was in pretty good shape, about 5'10", and in his mid-40s. He had a fairly high-up government job that frequently took him to Mexico. This particular trip had him working in Mexico City. One night, he and a co-worker went out to dinner in a kind of touristy area I think was called Zona Rosa. They went to a few bars after dinner, enjoying the city, and then decided to take a taxi back to their hotel. So, they were in the taxi when it stopped at a red light. There was a police car waiting in line behind them. Suddenly, two men from the street ran up to their taxi, and the driver let them in. They attacked my dad and his friend and demanded their money and jewelry. Now, my dad was pretty strong, so when he started kicking the men, it probably did some damage. That's when the man started stabbing him with the rusty screwdrivers they had for weapons. His pants were tattered and bloody from all the stab wounds. Meanwhile, the police behind them, who have a clear view of what was happening, do absolutely nothing. And the taxi speeds off with everyone still inside. The attackers take both of their wallets, watches, and wedding rings. Now the men are angry because there isn't much cash. They drive around the city, hitting my dad and his coworker over and over, while demanding the PIN numbers for their credit cards. My dad's coworker, who spoke Spanish, kept trying to tell them that they didn't have PIN numbers, but this just made them angrier. They had no idea what these men had planned for them as they drove them around and around the city. Finally, they stopped in an unfamiliar area next to an 18-wheeler. The men dragged my father and his friend out of the taxi and told them to crawl all the way underneath the truck. Then both men jumped back in the taxi and finally sped off, leaving my dad and his friend stranded in a sketchy part of town with no money. Eventually, they got yet another taxi and went back to the hotel. My dad immediately packed his things and took the next flight home. I remember him sitting at our kitchen table, looking so pale and disheveled. I'd never seen him like that before. His wounds weren't too serious, but he needed a tetanus shot and ended up going to counseling. Despite what happened, my dad didn't let this experience scare him away from going back to Mexico City. He was very brave and continued to travel there for work until his retirement. He's always said, "This could have happened to anyone in any city, but it's still one of the scariest things that's happened to my family."